Okay, welcome to Evaluating Your Business Idea. We have our very own SCORE Boston mentor, Ramesh Advani. He does a couple different presentations for us, and we haven't done this one in a while, and we thought it was definitely time to bring it back. So we're very glad that you're all here to join us. We do want to do a little intro to SCORE. Make sure that you're taking advantage of all the things that SCORE has to offer. Our goal is to provide small business education and mentorship. We do that in a couple different ways. We have a very robust website, score.org. You're going to find podcasts, blogs, previously recorded webinars, articles, templates that you can download. Lots of great information if you're looking for something on a specific topic, business topic. We also have our workshops and webinars. They're advertised through social media, our newsletter, and also listed on our website. I think the most important thing that SCORE does, though, would be the mentoring. And our mentors are volunteers, and they come to us with a variety of skills and experiences that they've learned from. And they want to share with that information with you. We work with folks that are in at all stages, whether you're trying to evaluate your business idea or decide if you are really interested in being a small business owner, to those that are in the planning phase, those that are in business, growing their business, and getting ready to exit their business. So we work with everyone. Excuse me. A beginning session, usually will run 45 minutes-ish, depending, plus or minus. They want to learn about you. They want to learn about your goals, your challenges, and they're going to work with you to come up with a plan so that you can be successful. It's not uncommon that when you start with one mentor, that other mentors are brought in to co-mentor for future sessions, or maybe you're referred forward as your needs change and progress, because we want to make sure that you get everything you need to be successful. So, how do you get a mentor? It's very easy. Score.org website is the easiest way. There are multiple ways on the score.org website. Probably the easiest would be let us do the matching for you, which you put your zip code in. That would put you to your local chapter. And then there's a little form. It doesn't ask a lot of questions, just a couple things, but we're really interested in what type of business and how we can help you now. And we have folks that match and they know the mentors. I am actually I match for the Boston chapter. We know our mentors and we know who can help you get things started. Like I said, though, you progress and things change, and you will move on to different mentors as you work through that. But it's a really wonderful experience if you haven't sought out a mentor. So as I mentioned, and I'm going to share this slide, the top part doesn't really apply. We're not going to really use Q&A. We are going to work through chat today, but I wanted to share with you the location of the recording that will be posted. And that recording will be at score.org/Boston under the blue bar local workshops. Previously recorded webinar will be posted. It'll be listed there. So I'm going to pull that share down. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Ramesh. Ramesh?
Thank you, Teresa. Hold on a second. Can everybody see my slides, Teresa?
Yes, we can.
Great. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming. So this is a little different. We used to do this webinar, we used to do it in-person workshop. And so for this workshop, the homework is really yours. You probably have been thinking about your business idea for a long time, and this webinar is going to help you evaluate your business idea. Is it going to be worth your while to pursue it? So it's not, nobody's going to tell you go ahead and do it or don't do it. But even for you to discuss this idea with anybody, especially with a SCORE mentor, if you decide after this to talk to a SCORE mentor and get mentoring, these are some of the questions that you need to be thinking about. And so let's get started. What we're going to do is let's start with introductions. I know there is a good sized group here on the chat. I'm not expecting you to necessarily give us a whole history of who you are, but if you could take a minute and just in the chat put down why you decided to come to this webinar, or what is the idea that you're thinking about? Now, if you don't want anybody to steal the idea and you're not sure whether you want to put your idea down, that's perfectly fine. But just a sentence of um, what interests you in this, and then we'll just kind of get going. So I'll pause here for a minute while you put your don't write a book, just one or two sentences in the chat.
Yeah, looking for to we have eager to learn how to evaluate a business or an idea, question, and to anticipate questions that maybe come from potential donors and stakeholders. I work with people that sometimes want to start a small business, so I'd like to be more equipped to share if the idea is not viable or not. Oh, those are great. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. So great. And I'm sure those of you who are thinking about it, I'm sure these will trigger some thoughts as we go through. I see a few more have come in. Teresa, what are people saying?
Yeah, teaching people, let's see. Wanting to start a business teaching people to walk properly to prevent pain, learn, want to evaluate the idea. I'm here to assess whether I have a good idea or how, or so I can focus my efforts, looking for objective analysis, structure of business ideas, starting a company this year doing product strategy. Um, and it has two ideas, so looking to, figure out where to go. I joined because I've been kicking around the ideas and trying to determine if it's worth pursuing. So yeah, a lot of the
Great,
same
great.
goals. Yeah.
So this is then you are in the right place, in the right room to do this, and I'm so glad you're here. So we'll start off, and I'm going to cover one, two, three, four, five, six topics. What is a great idea? Because there's no such thing as a bad idea, but we're going to focus on what is a great idea, what are products and services, customers, competition, just as good as talking about customers, we have to talk about competition, funding, and then your strengths and gaps. So let's get going. What is a great idea? So this is how we're going to get going on this. I will share my thoughts on what is a great idea. But before I do that, um, I'd like you in the chat to put down what you think is a great idea. What makes an idea a great idea? There are no wrong answers. And one of the things you'll get out of this is when people put down their thoughts in the chat on what is a great idea, you yourself will realize that there is no rocket science that you're going to get from me or from SCORE in this webinar. And it'll sort of reinforce your own thinking, and it'll help you also think about things that you may not have thought out, but somebody else may have thought and put it in the chat. So
Okay. And we have a couple already. We have a solution to a problem, something that others can relate to and get excited about. I think a great idea is one that is well formed. Someone has done research, thought critically about the idea and how to implement it. We have a nice group today.
we do have a nice group. Any other
Yeah.
thoughts from what everything that whoever wrote these out, they're right on the money.
It also can be a new perspective to a different from the different a different perspective from the norm. I'd like to learn how to target clients and see if the right customers for my services. Yeah, these are
Great.
great.
These are
Yeah.
great ideas. So here is what I want you to think about. There is not just one answer to that question. I've given you six things over here that you should think about. So if your idea helps someone fulfill an unmet need, so think about your idea and think about it. Does it help fulfill somebody's unmet need that's not being offered in the market? Right there, boom, you've got a great idea. The second thing is a great idea is one that solves a problem because who doesn't want problems to be solved? The third one is very different from not a problem, but it's something that people want no matter what. So, for example, when the cell phones came out, nobody ever thought people would want a cell phone, which is also a camera. But once it got out there, everybody wanted an Android or an iPhone because it just didn't do the phone work. It also did, and now it's unthinkable how that who doesn't have that. The fourth one, what is a great idea? A great idea is something that has not been done before by anyone. And again, the example that I gave you about a cell phone that takes pictures, that had never been done before. Who would have ever thought that a whole business of cameras would get folded into the business of talking to somebody on the phone? The fifth thing, it is a great idea, is things may have existed to solve a problem or meet a need, but it significantly improves on what's been done before. So that is a great idea. So, people are going to want that because it does it better. And I'm sure you can think of lots of products and lots of services that meet that condition. And the last one, I want each and every one of you to remember all of the five that I mentioned before are very important. It's a great idea. But if it does not make you money and does not make you happy, it's not a great idea. And you don't have to be just happy, you also have to make money. So it's not either or, it's got to be both. So I think everybody's on the same page, I hope. Teresa, are there any questions or comments on these thoughts on the great idea?
Um, Nothing new or yeah. Yep.
Okay. So, feel free if you're in this webinar, besides putting down your thoughts, if you have a question after a slide, feel free to put the question in and I'll be happy to answer it. Teresa will track that. Okay. All right. So, as you're evaluating it, think about your idea before you get into the business part of it. And these are some of the criteria, and they don't have to be all of these. It could be one or two or something. Especially, it could be one of the first five and the last one. Okay, so let's say you have an idea. Now, this idea has to be brought to the marketplace. And how do you convert an idea into something that is in the marketplace? And that's what we're going to talk about next. So, could you tell me in the chat, what do you think are the products and services? What is a product? What is a service? Any thoughts? Please put them down.
Can you give an example?
Or that's
One
Uh,
example?
we well, anything you buy in a store is a product. Anything you when you sign up for online internet access, that's a service. So, but when I say products and service, what do you understand by products and services?
Okay, well, what I've gotten is product is a noun, a service is a verb, and a product generally a physical good and a service is doing something for someone.
That's both of those are right on the money, but that's very basic. But if now over the next two, three slides, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of your customer. If you were walking in their shoes, what would you think of when you think of that verb or that noun, product or service?
I have a product is something material, a service can be something that is necessary that you provide, or something that someone else may want you to do for them. Products fulfill the customer requirements, and the service is satisfaction. Um, I have
We're
the end
getting
result.
there. We're getting there. Those are very good. More
Some,
thoughts along
some,
those lines?
yeah, something of value to me as a consumer that helps me. A product is something that is a commodity.
Okay, great. So there's one word that this one of the last chat comments use, which is very, very important. And so let's share some of those things that you need to think about. The word was value. There are two questions you should ask yourself when you're taking your idea and converting it into a product or service. What you need to think about is what value is that product or service adding to the buyer? Okay. And the second question, if it's adding value, are people going to pay money for that product or service? Very basic, sounds like common sense. But if the answer to the second question is no, they don't want to pay, they want it for free, well, you need to think about, do you really want to go down that path? Because at the end of the day, you want to make people happy by giving them value, but you want to be happy and make money. And let me talk a little bit more about the definition of value. And this was also mentioned in the chat by somebody who responded. It fixes a problem. Same thing as what I said during the ideas. It meets an unmet need. It saves time or money. It doesn't have to save both, but from the customer standpoint, does it save them time or money? And does the product or the service provide benefits that last a long time? So I'll give you an example. I used to work for a company that made um, products that are used in the kitchen. They made baking dishes, and the name of the company was Corning, or is Corning. And I don't know how many of you ever bought or used Pyrex ware. Well, that Pyrex ware, which was made of glass, never broke. And you finally reached a point where you got so irritated by the whole thing, you may want to have wanted to smash it and say, okay, I just want to change it. Well, people before Corning came up with a Pyrex product, anything made of glass was always prone to breaking very easily. But the products they made, which went into the oven, which went on top of the stove, they lasted a long time. So think about your idea when you convert it into a product or a service. How long do the benefits last? While I'm talking about value, I want to make a couple of comments about questionable value. And what do I mean by that? Questionable value usually means after a point in time, you are not going to be making money on it. It'll sort of die away in the product or service life cycle. If it's a Me Too product or a Me Too service, and what do I mean by a Me Too? Somebody else also is in the marketplace with that product, and you decided, oh, look at this. This product is making a lot of money for these people, and look at the number of people who are buying it. I also want to offer this. What happens with the Me Too product or service is you then start getting into price wars. Eventually, you'll end up going down a path where you want to either cut prices because the competition is cutting the prices, and then you reach a point where it doesn't even cover your costs. And if it doesn't cover your costs, you're going to lose money, and that product or service might be great, but it's not going to last in the marketplace. So that's questionable value. And that's something which you have to think about before and not be dealing with the reality of that later on. The second point about questionable value is it's a product that allows the buyer or the customer meets a need, and it's not really a need, but they want to keep up with the Joneses. I don't know whether you realize what that phrase means. So basically, it's she has it, so I'm going to get it. They have it, I'm going to get it. When people use that as the reason for buying something, that product or service doesn't last. It's like that's thinking of like an adolescent, and not thinking of for in a more mature manner about your products or services. I'm going to stop here. Does this make sense? Any questions? Does anybody have any questions on this? No questions.
I don't see any questions so far.
Okay.
But if people think of them, don't,
Yeah, yeah,
definitely we can go back to them. Yeah. Okay.
absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
here we go. Is an app a service or a product? It's kind
That's a
of
very
both.
good question. That's a very good question. It depends on how you buy the app. These days, software is sold as a service, and if it's sold as a digital product, it's really a service because then you also have this whole revenue stream that you can get after they sign up. You can do upgrades, updates. So, for example, I use Quicken, but Quicken is a product offered by Intuit, just like QuickBooks is. Um, I used to buy it on a floppy, and then floppy disks went out of style. And what Intuit did is they offered Quicken as a service, and you signed up annually. And so whenever they had to what do you call fix problems, they did updates, etc. They do it. I'm basically paying an annual fee, so it's a service, and it's a very, very incredibly great way of locking in the customer as a service.
Is Me Too always of questionable value? Can your service grow the market? Um, Example, there is an unserved market, or how can you evaluate whether there is an unserved market?
Uh, Hold that question, a very good question. We'll be getting into that when we talk about customers next. So Me Too is it's one of these things I can't give you a black and white answer. Let's say you have access the market with a product in let's say across the United States. But now the market is getting saturated, but well before that, you want to export your product. So you offer it to people in other countries. So you're accessing other markets. So you could still have that. It may not be a Me Too over there, but if it is, your product could be of a better quality or more value. But eventually, if it's a product where this is related to the timing in the market. when do you enter the market? So if somebody is doing something which is very, very successful, and then you also want to jump in, just be aware of that. Chances of that being very profitable for you is going to be a little less. So So let's say you got the idea, you converted it into a product or a service, and it meets the criterion for the value that the buyer is getting. What is the next thing you should be thinking about as you're thinking about these products and services? The most important question, what matters more than anything else, is potential customers. So, what are the questions that you should be thinking about when you're thinking about potential customers?
Price points.
Yes, good.
That's one. That's yeah. That's all I have so far. I'm sure that
Okay, yeah,
everyone else.
I'll wait. I'll
That one was
wait.
fast off the keyboard. So,
No,
market
that's fine.
size, marketing demographics, who they are on paper versus more deeply. Target segment, what would motivate them to buy a product or service, where they are, competition.
Right, right on the money. All these are great answers and great ideas and questions to think about. So here we go. The first most important thing, and this is like people might put fancy words on this, and maybe it's the start of market research. The first most important thing is, what is the profile of your customers? And in order to answer that question for your product, these are the things you need to think about. And we already heard one express. Think about the demographics. And when I say demographics related to your product or service, the age that you're trying to gear up to provide these products or service, the gender, the ethnicity, or it could be it's not relevant. So when you think of demographics, so for example, if I'm providing something through the internet to anybody who has a computer and access, and you're providing a service, uh, the age and gender and ethnicity may not matter. But if it's a specific thing, if I'm offering or want to open uh, hair and nail salon, then it might matter the gender, you know. Of course, if you're offering pedicures, that anybody can get a pedicure. Uh, Age, you're offering it to people who are teenagers, you're offering it to young adults, you're offering it to seniors, you're offering it to the general population. So that's for demographics. You need to be thinking about that. The second thing about the profile of your customers is geography. Is this going to be local? Any physical brick and mortar business is going to be local. Is it going to be regional? Are you going to offer it to Suffolk County, to New England, to Massachusetts? Um, are you going to offer it nationally? Um, or it could be you start off by offering it regionally and then move on to national, but that would be part of your planning. These are the things and of course, it's also universal. So if something which is offered digitally on the internet, that's universal. The third thing you need to think about as you're trying to profile your market is the market size. How big is the market for your product or service? Now, the first question that comes to somebody's mind when you're thinking about how big is, or where do I get that information? This is where you have to do some work and pound the pavement and go to libraries, go to online tools that are there and do the research. There are in different industries, there is data available. And of course, you know, you can dive into some of these things if you decide to come with a score mentor and work with the score mentor. The score mentor will be able to help you think about that. So you find out how big the market is, and then you think about what percentage of that market, for that demographic, for that geography, what could you capture and how long will it take? So sometimes the markets are so big that you say, hey, if I can get 5% of this market and I get it in, I'm making this up, in 12 months, you know, that's great. And you might say, I can get 2% in 12 months and then I can expand and get to 10%. So that's another area of when you're thinking about potential customers in terms of profiling them, you have to think of that. And the fourth one is the type of buyer who will be a who will find your product or your service appealing. So in the world of marketing, buyers are classified either as innovators, people who just want the latest gadget, the latest idea, the most brilliant thing you can come up with. Then there are the early adopters who will say, okay, I'm going to get that. I'm getting that Tesla. Early majority, okay, I'm going to get that product, but many people are buying it, and I want to be part of the early majority. Then there are the late majority and the laggards. So as you're profiling the customers, you need to think about, is this something that is going to appeal to early adopters or to innovators, etc. Classify them. And this, in the chat, someone replied, price sensitivity. How sensitive are your potential customers going to be to price? Why are all these things related to customers important? Because once you've got your act together, thinking about converting your idea to products and services and these demographics, then you'll be able to do a business plan. And in the business plan, we will be talking about you would figure out the marketing approach. How are you going to reach your potential customers? There are many, many different ways. What are the sales channels you will select? How are you going to roll out your operations? In order to address marketing and sales and operations, you have to have a very clear idea about the profile of your customers. So I will pause here and see if there are any questions.
I don't have any questions currently.
Okay, so let me go to the next one. So let's say you have done your homework and you've done an analysis to find out what customers are going to go for your products. The next most important thing you have to think about is competition. Because right alongside customers is this other C word, competition. Very, very important. So when I say competition, what are some of the questions that would come to your mind that you would want to think about when you're thinking about the competition? Surely, you know what competition means. Somebody else is offering that same thing, but what are some of the things you think about when you think about competitors?
I have, can I compete? The market share.
Yeah.
Healthy competition, whether it's going to be healthy competition,
Yes. Good.
copycats.
Yeah.
What already exists and how can my business do it better? Is someone already in the market with my product or service? Is there room for options?
Excellent.
Can they
Excellent.
pivot, compete, price?
Yes. Great, great points. Very well made. So just keep those in mind that you just heard, and let me add to that. So the first question, is there any competition? How many? If the question is there is competition, so when Elon Musk came up with the idea of an electric car, is there any competition? No. If he asks the same question now, how many? I'm sure you'd be able to tell him very directly how many. So let's say there is competition. Do you know who they are? And if you don't know who they are, you need to do some market research and find out. So look at your product or your service and find out who your product or service is appealing to, who are the potential customers, and who else is providing that to those customers. Do you know who they are? Let's say you found and you said there is no competition. Then right away you should know that if your product is good, if your service is good, and you're delivering it, you're going to get competition. So what you need to do is profile and find out who could become the competition. Kodak and Polaroid never imagined that they would have Samsung and Apple become the competition. So that's some basic questions of the competition. But then you have to do is profile the competition, which is what some people said in the chat already, versus you. Where is this competition? How do they sell? What do customers think of their products or services? The customers may think, well, this is a lousy product. Oh, I can do better with this product, which came out of this person's idea. And so you might be able to get right in and get into taking away customers from those people. The other is how sound are their financials? It's very important to not just think about the product or the service, but think about the company that is making that product or service and bringing it to the market. If their financials are not sound, they are going to either go bankrupt or start spiraling down. And so you can certainly think of getting in there. The next thing is, how do you distinguish yourself from them? Very, very important. You know, it has to be a way of showing there is value to this which you're getting from ABC, but now here I am with my product and it's better. The value elements that you bring to the client will help distinguish yourself from them. And it doesn't have to be a physical thing, it could be um, a process thing, for example. So let's say they are buying a product uh, just by going to a brick and mortar store, but you can offer it digitally. You can offer it through a major distributor like Amazon, and it's easy for them to get it and it delivered to their house or a service they can buy. So make sure you understand how the competition gets the product or service to the customer and how can you distinguish yourself. And of course, how does your product or service stand out? And the last thing that you need to think about, could there be a big company that is going to take your idea or product over? These days, in the IT industry, for example, Google, Meta, Alphabet, all these companies, they are not necessarily coming up with the next big thing that they can offer in the package of things they offer to customers. They go to a small company and they buy out the company. But maybe you feel confident enough and you want to get into this because it gets up to a point, then you say, you know what, I want to wash my hands of this and I want to sell it to Big Brother. So maybe you want someone to buy you out. So that's something that you would take further in your journey as you do that. But think about these questions, and it's perfectly okay. One person may want to be there right till the end. Another person may want to take the product and say, you know what, I'm going to go to Facebook and let Facebook buy it out, from me. Uh, I'll pause here. Any questions?
No questions.
No questions. All right. So again, I'm going to rehash. Identify what is a great idea. Take that idea, convert it into, is it a product? Are you offering products? Are you going to offer services? Of course, if it's a product, a physical product, there's this whole complication of manufacturing them and producing them. Uh, Service also has its own needs that you have to develop for the operations. Once you've got the product and service, as you're evaluating, think about the customers. Who are the potential customers for your business? And evaluate that in terms of putting down the demographics, and then think about the competition. Who else is doing it? Who else is not doing it? Who could be doing it in the future? So once you've got all these various questions answered, the next thing you need to think about, because now we are moving on from the business idea to creating a business, to creating a company. What you need to get anything going is funding. So, what are some of the questions that come to your mind when you're thinking about funding? Remember, you need money to make money, and the money that you spend is going to get spent before the profits start coming in. So,
Okay,
could
I
you?
do have a question. If we, while they're typing, can we address
Yes,
that?
yes, yes.
What if you think they will want to buy you out and you don't want them to buy it and bury it, effectively taking out the competition?
So that is and I know I don't, Teresa, I always am careful, but in this particular workshop, that always happens. This is the kind of question that more specifically would be answered if you were with a score mentor. But what you can do is create barriers and walls to prevent that company from buying you out. And this is where, lawyers and intellectual property and certain other protections you can build around yourself and your company to prevent the large big brother from buying you out. This is probably a only general answer I could give you for that one.
Okay. And I know we kind of touched on where we can find some of the information. You
Yes.
mentioned the, libraries like Kirstein Library, for example, is a business library. They have lots of resources. You can find information online.
Yes.
Yeah, you'd kind of mention those
Yes.
things. Yeah.
And if on your team you bring on people who have been either in that market or in that industry or uh, about that product or service, they will provide the knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge in people's heads.
Yeah, you can even talk to people that have similar business, but outside of your location that wouldn't mind sharing information.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I do have the funding replies. I can read through those. I
Yes.
have startup costs. How much are what are the startup costs? How much to invest and how to protect yourself, loans, grants, how long before you'll start making revenue, how long it will be before turning a profit, who can be a potential funder and what issues do they care about most, projected revenue. Yeah.
Great. Great. Right. Right on the money. Whoever wrote these, this person is already thinking in good practical terms. So this is, excuse me, when you think about funding, so there are four major areas that you need to think about. Again, as now we're getting into detail. So Teresa mentioned that this will be there you'll be able to get these slides when you go back. The first question is, how much will you need to fund your business until it can stand on its own? So, how much is the investment needed? And once the business starts turning a profit, there are two ways in which profits can be used. One is obviously putting it back in your pocket or into your investor's pocket, and the other is to invest in the business. And generally, what you want to do is in terms of picking those two areas where the funding goes, the first choice should be how much of it is needed so that the business stands on its own. And not only stands on its own, but also can grow on its own without you pumping in money. Once you've met that need, then the rest of the profit can go into your pocket or that of your investors if it's more than you. The second question, once you've answered how much will you need, and again, this, by the way, the detailed financial planning you can do jointly with the SCORE mentor. Where will the money come from and why will they give it to you? So, the sources of funding uh, in the business world, the first most important funding source is you yourself, your own money. The second is it's commonly known as friends and family, which is could be your parents, it could be your siblings, it could be your aunts, uncles, and it could be your friends, close friends. The third, when you have a funding need that's larger than what you have or your friends and family can give, is what they call angel investors. People who, like your friends and family, who were convinced this is a great idea, this is a great product, and they are willing to give you money. And they're willing to sign an agreement with you where they are willing to wait. When you make profit, then they'll say, okay, and you say it up front and you say, this is what you'll get. The fourth category is venture capitalists. And without getting into a lot of detail about companies that are called private equity companies or venture capitalists, it's important to know that these are people when you want to go to certain higher levels of funding needs that you have. Um, and, again, that's something uh, we can discuss at another time when you're talking to a SCORE mentor. And then the last one is loans. You can get loans. You can also get loans from friends and family. Uh, but when I say loans, I'm referring to commercial loans from a bank, um, and small companies that are starting up. SCORE, for example, helps people put together proposals and go to local regional banks and local banks who also then will provide that with loan guarantees from the Small Business Administration. So loans is another. So loans is debt. The rest is all equity. So how much money? Where will it come from? These are some of the questions you'll have to think about. And the third most important thing, and if you remember nothing from what I've said today or will be saying, this is the most important one line bullet to remember. The most important thing is cash flow. Cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. Cash is king. You have to make sure that there's enough cash that will sustain your business and also give you plenty of money to live on. So always be thinking as you're projecting out what's going on with your funding and your money, what is it doing to cash flow? And the last point I'm making is because a lot of people think, oh, an accountant or a financial person will know that, oh, I have a terrible head for number. Oh, I never liked math. Well, I can tell you, my friends, these five little points, you have to always know your numbers. You are the owner, you're the boss. You should know exactly what your startup costs are. You should know what your revenues are. Revenues are called the top lines. You should know what your projections are and what your actuals are. So let's say you've got a running business, you've got the product, you're in the market, and you're 6 months down the road. You should know what you projected, and you should know at the end of the month what are your revenues. The other thing after revenues is costs. What are your costs? And costs, without getting into a lot of detail, there are two types of costs: fixed costs and variable costs. What is a fixed cost? A fixed cost is something regardless of how many products or services you offer to the market, that's your fixed cost for the month. So, for example, the lease that you pay for your warehouse and your office, that's a fixed cost. The variable cost is the materials that go into making of your product, or if you're offering services, you have human labor, you have software programmers or whatever, that's a variable cost. You should know your costs. What are the actuals and the projections? Why do you need to know revenues and costs? Simply because one minus the other gives you your profit. That's how you'll know how you're doing with profit. The fourth and fifth items have to do with capital. How much of a capital investment do you have to make, and when would you have to make that? And how much working capital is required? What is working capital? Inventory is working capital. Your accounts receivables are working capital. When you sell products, nobody pays cash these days. Everything is on credit. So when they charge something to their credit card to buy from you, it's when their bank releases the money from their credit card and comes into your bank as cash. So accounts receivable is working capital, inventory is working capital. I'll pause here again if there are any questions.
To clarify, or can you clarify, do angel investors expect to be paid back later once you start making a profit? And would this also apply to a nonprofit context?
The answer to the first question is yes, absolutely. They are not, they are human angels. If they were the real angels, they may not want to get paid back, but they won't get paid back. And does this apply to nonprofits? Uh, that, by the way, and I also am part of the nonprofit practice group at SCORE. That's a very complicated um, answer because a nonprofit um, takes donations and grants. And so when they give money to a nonprofit, people are not expecting to get it back. They do get tax deductions if you are a registered nonprofit going after public funds.
Okay. Can you give the definition of working capital one more time, please?
Sure. So every company, when it puts out its financial statements, there is a profit and loss statements of your revenues and expenses, and then you have something called the balance sheet. On the balance sheet, you have your assets and liabilities. This is what the company owns. And on the asset side, there are what are called fixed assets and working capital assets. And the working capital assets are cash, accounts receivable, inventory, and marketable securities. So the main thing in working capital requirements you have to think about, if it's a physical product, inventory, finished goods, and raw materials, etc., and then accounts receivable. Everybody, even if you don't have a physical product, you would have accounts receivable. People buying on credit, and credit is something that can be converted to cash, but uh, it's part of working capital.
Okay. I don't have any other questions at this time.
Okay, so this is the last meaningful area that as you're answering these questions for yourself, what are some of the things that you need to think about and why when you think about your strengths and gaps? I'll give it a minute, but then I'll go right into it. What are the things you need to think about when it comes to strengths and gaps?
Somebody actually posted, who knows me well and can help me reflect on those. I like that approach. What you can do yourself and what you need help with on or a partner on.
Right on the money, right on the money. So here, these are the things there are 6 questions you should think about when you think about your strengths and gaps. So like doing an inventory of yourself. The first one is, will your circumstances allow you to spend the time and energy to stick with your idea and your products and services till it becomes a profitable, ongoing concern? That could take 1 year, it could take 5 years. And when I say your circumstances, I mean maybe it's a source of income, maybe you have family obligations and responsibilities. Establish yourself in the marketplace and have the time and energy. You have to try to answer that question. Nobody else can answer that first question other than you yourself. The second one is, do an inventory on what are you good at or your team good at. And the third is, what are you not good at? Why is it important to answer that? Because what you're good at and your team is good at, you don't need to buy that service or those skills. What you're not good at is very important. So it's important not to deceive yourself. Oh yeah, I can do that. I'll do that. Or to get started, I'll take care of all of this. Find out what you're not good at and how will you find people or resources to do. And somebody in the chat mentioned exactly that. How will you find people? And there are many, many people and many resources. They're in the industry, there is in the marketplace. Also there are people, and and to sort of judge that, you could, if you have some confidence in your family or in your business, they might be able to answer question 2 or 3. They might be impartial and help you do that. The next 2 questions are very important to remember, is that you can't do this yourself. When you have a great idea and you're forming a business, are you capable? Do you have the skills of motivating and leading a team? If those of you who ever been a coach for your kids' sports or anywhere else, you know the coach matters a whole heck of a lot, no matter how good your team is, no matter how good the Celts were. It was very important that there was a Joe Mazzulla there with them. So, are you capable of motivating and leading a team? Can you be a coach? Many entrepreneurs who start off, they are very good at doing everything themselves, not necessarily good at being a coach. So examine how you do that and how you would improve on those skills. And then the last one is, when you let go the the strings, or the when you're leading the chariot there, can you give it to somebody who you trust, and can you trust them enough and you're willing to delegate? And what does trust mean? Not that they're just honest and ethical. When they make mistakes, and they will make mistakes, that you're going to be willing to train them and look past those mistakes. So that's very important when you're evaluating your strengths and gaps. These are the things. And that's pretty much what this webinar is. What I would like to do is to ask you to gather your thoughts, write out the answers to what you learned today. And then if you want to have more conversations and guidance, we have, just in the Boston chapter, we have about 90 counselors, different industries, different skill sets. Um, and feel free. And Teresa is our intake coordinator. And I know we've just run out of time, but if there is a, Teresa, if there's a quick burning question, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, and I'm putting my email in. If anyone would want to reach out to me, I can help you connect with a mentor either in Boston or in one of the other chapters in our district. I'm happy to help anyone, or if you come up with a question, um, I can make sure it gets to the right people. So, okay. We have a lot of thank yous in the
Uh,
chat. Lots of thank yous. Incredible event. Thank you. Very helpful. So great. Thank you very much for all that. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you again on another SCORE webinar. Thank you, Ramesh, for volunteering to present and share your knowledge with everyone today. Thank you.
you're very welcome, and thank you for coming. I hope we can help you with that score.
All right.